Okay, Greg. So tell us, first of all, tell us where you are right now and what happens outside of yoga for you.
Where I am right now, I'm sat outside work. Believe me, the inside of my car is more aesthetically pleasing than my office, and there's less. I mean, I'm actually looking at a delivery I've got. A big lorry is here, and I'm just watching them offload it as well. I've got no idea whether anyone knows I'm in the car or not. At the moment, I've got my phone propped up against a bag, so they can't see that. It just looks like I'm talking to a bag. So,
This is your secret undercover yoga life.
yeah, and it's getting warm in here as well.
Oh, here he goes.
Got my scarf off.
So,
So yeah, I'm
so
sat
what
at.
is the job though? What is the normal?
Um, it's engineering, so it's steel fabrication. It's very much, an old school engineering firm. It's dirty, it's noisy, it's a million miles away from the yoga studio. Into,
Yeah.
I'm not talking geographically, although it is, but
Yeah.
it's yeah, my work environment is a million miles away from my yoga teaching environment. Let's put it like that. But
And that's what I love, right? That's why
yeah.
I think these types of calls are really important because the message we want to kind of get across is that anyone can do yoga,
Mm.
right? And sometimes people have this like imagination that you have to be a certain age, a certain gender, a certain type, a certain flexibility. Maybe it's been in your family forever.
Mm.
And I just love that, our teaching team, even our teaching team at the studio, like you're in engineering,
Mm.
and how old were you when you found yoga, Greg?
40.
Yeah.
I was 40. Um, I was out of shape, unmotivated, not in a great place physically. Um, I would occasionally go to the gym, but if I'm honest, it was very much for reasons of wanting to look not horrible when I go on holiday. That was my thought processes at the time. It was like book a holiday a couple of months before I go. Look at yourself, Greg. You look terrible. Go to the gym. And it was in one of these gym sessions where I can't remember the injury. I hurt myself in some way. I couldn't go to the gym. I was married at the time. My wife said, "Why don't you go to the leisure centre and try yoga?" And eventually she persuaded me. I crept into the back. You know, there were all these in my head, these, as you just said, you know, aesthetically, you know, not perfect, but, they looked like yoga people. Some did, some didn't. And I crept into the back and it was like, oh God, what am I doing here? This isn't for me. Um, and then a few weeks later, I was turning up early to get to the front of the class. I didn't really give it much thought at the time as to why I loved it so much. I just did, and I was happy with not knowing and just doing something for the pure enjoyment. Now I look back, and yes, there was the physical aspects. I noticed myself very quickly. My body felt more bulletproofed. You honestly, you didn't know me before yoga. You know, it would hurt me, my back, my knees to get in and out of the car. And I had no flexibility. I know there might be this view to the uninitiated that yoga is just about stretching and making yourself flexible. And I suppose I did at the time. Um, but I think I think I must have, on an intuitive level or a on subconscious level, known known that this was amazing for my mental health, that it was giving me, this is all in hindsight, giving me the mental, emotional space to actually go inwards, to actually form. a more intimate bond with myself. It was almost like, my body, my mind, my emotions were all separate entities. And that's what yoga, I think, very quickly taught me was the wholeness of us and how to be in touch with all those various aspects of us. Um, so that was what grabbed me, I think, was that. And as I say, I very quickly came to love it. Um, Practiced a couple of times a week at the leisure centre. So you've got an even bigger range of people at a leisure centre than you have at the yoga studio, because you do have people that are very much right. I'm doing yoga because I'm cramming in another session of something within my membership, get the most out of it. And so it was a very different crowd. And then when I joined Soul Sanctuary as a student, um, probably 5 years ago,
Yeah.
then I just felt as though I was really starting to meet my people, and I think for a lot of my life, I'd worn a mask to fit in and probably hid my softer side, my more vulnerable side, which I know is very common, particularly in men. Um, and then, yeah, I met my people, and that only helped my yoga grow, my enjoyment grow. Um, and then after a couple of years, teacher training. Yeah, that was crazy. That was crazy.
And then, like, what a journey. So you stepped into your first yoga class at 40 because of an injury, which I
Mm.
think so many people resonate with, right? Like, I'm injured, go to yoga. And that's what I love about what they call like the butterfly effect. Some people come to it for different reasons, and then once you're in, hopefully, like the door is open to this other world. And
Mm.
now, yeah, so you've just had quite an important birthday. So 10 years later,
Yeah.
teaching regularly at the studio, with such a popular class and a massive part of the community. And I know that's something that you talk about, Greg, is that community was really important to you. Is that
Yeah.
is that like one of your favorite things about teaching, about yoga?
It is. I mean, I could come along to the studio and not do yoga and just enjoy being at the studio, because the relationships I've made with teachers, students alike, um, it just feels a really safe space, a space for authenticity. And I talk about that in my class as well. I will say, look, we all have different bodies, different life stories. We're different on any given day, from minute to minute. So it's getting into that place where we're um, in tune with ourselves, recognizing what our body, our mind, our emotions need at that present moment. And I give people carte blanche to do whatever they want to do, to take rest, to modify, to sit something out. Um, and I think that's important, that you be inclusive, because yoga truly is the most inclusive thing I've ever come across. All shapes, all sizes. I carry an injury. I mean, at the moment, particularly, I'm teaching in a kind of I'm half teaching really physically, because some of the things I can't do. So I'm actually living proof as I teach that you modify, that if you don't want to go as deep into a pose, if it's not right for you at that given moment. And I speak to that. I speak of self-love, self-acceptance, all the things that I have struggled with in my life. And that is the one thing I like to put across in my class, is that wherever you're at, it's fine. It's absolutely fine if you're not. Um, and also that, to drop any thoughts of comparison. You know, I learnt this phrase in the teacher training: comparison is the thief of joy.
Yeah.
And it is so true, because I remember when I first went into a yoga class, and probably for a few years after, I would be looking around and I would be thinking, oh, they're stronger than me. They can go deeper than me. Oh, they look better in a pair of shorts than me. All of those things. And through yoga, I've come to realize that, you know, this community is great and we're part of something much bigger. But also, we've all got this individual solo journey in life. And just to go easy on ourselves and not compare. We take composite bits of other people and make up this Frankenstein's monster of the perfect person, the perfect yogi, and all this lot. It doesn't exist. There's no such thing. We're all just there for ourselves. And yes, we come together as a community, but embracing that solo journey as well, and just being happy. I mean, recently I've started practicing a gratitude meditation every night. Yeah, meditation. 10 years ago, 5 years ago, meditation, what's that? That's nonsense. Those were my beliefs, but now I'm just much more grateful for the body I've got, scars and all, stretch marks and all. you know it's just showing gratitude that for what we've got, and that I'm starting to ramble a little bit and lose my thread, but
Oh, I think it's
yeah.
really useful hearing you talk, Greg, because like I hope you don't mind me saying, that those were some of the things that you definitely struggled with on your teacher training,
Mm,
right? And
yeah.
to hear you talking so passionately about that now, and that's what I always try to say to people is like our greatest struggles become our greatest gifts, right? And
Oh
the
yeah.
way that you
Yeah.
teach and how passionately you speak about that, because
Mhm.
you have been through that journey of a lot of self-doubt and a lot of limiting beliefs.
Yeah.
And what was such a privilege to witness on the training was you stepping over that, because when you stand up and have to try and teach a yoga class and you have no idea what you're doing on the first 3 days of the training, all of that stuff rears up. And that's our job then to
Mhm.
go like, it's okay, you're here to get messy. Let's work through this so that you can then teach authentically. And it's interesting that you use that word, because I was teaching the online teacher training last night and one of the ladies got to the call early. And she said, I've been so lucky because I got to go to the studio this week. And she said, it's amazing. She's like, I've tried so many different classes. She was like, all the teachers are so different. But she's like, I know they've done your training and I'm trying to figure out why it is that they all feel so special. And she was like, what it is the authenticity.
Mm.
And it's really interesting. I used to think we were so lucky that like certain people came to studio. We had this community of like-minded people. And then it was somebody on the training that says to me, like, I don't think it's lucky that these people are coming. I think it's that what we work on through the training so much is authenticity, is finding
Mm.
out who is the real you and being brave enough to live authentically. And
Yeah.
when you live that way and then come and teach that way, there's just this sense of come as you are to the studio. Like no one cares what brand of yoga pants you're wearing or what pose you're doing or how good or long you've been doing yoga. Like just none of it matters. And
Mm.
I love your story for that reason, because you've been on such a journey with your like limiting beliefs and
Yeah.
what you think of yourself in that way, and now you teach so passionately from that perspective. So would you say that that was like your biggest learning on the training?
My yeah, my biggest learning on the training was just forging a deeper relationship with myself. I don't actually think that in my 20s and 30s, I didn't know myself. I never inquired. I never even went inwards. I just went through life not being authentic. Um, Went through life being a bloke. I would go out, I would drink, I would go, go to clubs. I would, I suppose in my younger days, I would have been, I definitely wore masks and different masks for different situations, different people. The training and yoga has taught me that I'm just fine as I am, you know. And when you speak authentically, you think authentically, you worry less about the outcomes of how you speak, how you interact with people. Because I used to, when I was having a conversation with someone, I would even do this. I would think of what I was going to. This all happened very quickly because I'm very intelligent. Um, I would think of my next line in a conversation, and then it would be actually the process would be that I would then think, how is that going to be received? Now, maybe we all do this. I don't know, but I did it constantly. I would almost be like you know, like proofreading what I was about to say before I've even said it. Is this acceptable? Does this make me look weak to that person? Does this make me look whatever it might be? And now I know my heart is good, so I know that whatever I'm going to say comes from a heart-centered place, and I don't worry about how it's received because I know that it is coming from a genuine, authentic place. And if that's received differently by the other person, that's on them. That's you can't control that. I think I try to micromanage my interactions rather than just how I teach now, which sometimes can be chaotic, particularly when I'm mirroring. Now, when I first started teaching, that would have put me off. I would have gone, oh God, I forgot my flow, or I've said left instead of right. Now we just make a joke and we laugh about it. And I might say weird, outrageous things, but they come from a place of if I didn't feel safe and I didn't feel held by the community, I wouldn't be able to be my authentic self, I don't think.
So true.
So
It works both ways, doesn't it? That's a really nice way of putting it. And I think you've mentioned before, Greg, about some of your favorite parts of the training being that morning, like the morning session, the
oh,
check-ins.
yeah, 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 laughter, tears, and this was every morning. It's kind of like I only saw you 12 hours ago, so why every morning do we have these check-ins? And there's such an abundance of things to talk about because essentially we've finished because it was intensive training I did. So literally I'd be getting home at 7:30, 8, something to eat, bed, get up early, come back for the next day's training. So you would think that there would be nothing to talk about the next day. But I think as each of us was going through the process, we were also peeling off layers of, you know, self-doubt, trauma, triggers. So there was always something to talk about because it was almost like every day we were kind of seeing life through fresh eyes, through new eyes, because we'd processed and we'd done work the previous day. Does that make sense? So it was like we were all discovering ourselves in a way, discovering our triggers, discovering our strengths, discovering just so much about ourselves. And it was an absolute joy, the check-ins in the morning. And if you hadn't have kind of kept a rein on it, we would have had 200 hours of, of sitting in a circle and processing our lives. And it was a pleasure to do that because at the same time, we were all strangers beforehand. So the relationships we were forming within the training um, just meant that day by day we were getting to know people on a really intimate and vulnerable level. Um, you know, I probably spent more time and got to know people better in that 5 or 6 weeks than I have done it in a lifetime with some of my friends. I've actually spent more quality time, more heart-led conversations with people who were strangers 5 or 6 weeks ago than I ever have with most of my friends and some family.
Mm.
Crazy, isn't it?
It is, and it just shows what, like, when we can be brave enough and feel safe enough to be vulnerable, like the depth of connections that we can make.
Mm.
And like I said before, but it was after COVID, your training, so we had the two trainings really close together. So you had quite small groups, your group, and three of you were chaps. So you had Mark, yourself, and Scott. And you had amazing relationships with all of them, but it was so lovely seeing you chaps together as well and the relationships that you've created. And I know you
Yeah,
still have, that closeness
yeah,
now, right?
yeah,
Which is
totally. Um, I think before the training, I didn't really have any male outlets for kind of my natural way of being is to have meaningful, deep, vulnerable conversations. I forgot that for 30 years, but I think that's always been me. Now I work in engineering. It's smelly, it's dirty. So I don't have the outlets. I can talk to people authentically and genuinely, but you don't have that, I don't know, that shared perspective or shared vulnerability coming back at you.
Mm.
What I love about yoga and teaching and the people I meet within it is that I can be totally vulnerable, and I find that that opens up space for them so they can discuss with me, they can be vulnerable with me, and if that helps them, then I am happy to go out there, give people my life story, tell them I've struggled with mental health, tell them I've struggled with body image, self-love, self-respect, all of those things. And if that presents people with an opportunity to come back and say, yeah, you know what, I feel that myself sometimes, and then we can have a conversation, um, then that gives me the most joy in the world. I I I like to help. I like to I like yeah, I like to open up to people, and I like people to feel safe enough with me to open up with me. And if we can help each other by doing that, then job done.
Yeah,
Job
and
done.
that comes through so much in your classes, Greg. Like, one of my questions is like, what style do you teach? And I just love how you bring in a lot of that authenticity, that vulnerability, that sharing, what you can and can't do and poses yourself, and just
Mm,
really working through it with them. But also your humor. Like, I love how, yoga sometimes can feel quite serious and quite heavy, and we do go into the mental health side of things, but you always manage to bring so much joy and lightness to it. And that was a real like standout part of your training. There was just so much joy, like the way you and Mark like mess with each other, and we were saying before, like you wore the same shoes, and
mm.
you would swap your shoes, and just like there was constantly, like, it was so playful and it was so lovely.
Yeah, yeah. And that was, it was all as natural as the vulnerability was, the joy and the messing around and the banter. That was equally as genuine and just joyful. But this is the magic that can happen when you're in a safe space, when you are held, where you don't feel judged. I think a lot of my life I felt judged. Now, whether that was the actual reality or not, that was how I felt. So being amongst the yoga community, a broad spectrum of people, but there is, you find a common thread that we're all just doing our best. We're all, we're all trying. We all value our wellness to actually go on the mat,
Yes.
and that might be different things for different people. It might be the physical side for somebody, it might be the mental side, it might be the emotional side, it might be just a break from their day, because a lot of our days are routine, you know.
Yeah.
So I think that, that community is just like a big warm hug. The Soul Sanctuary community and the bigger yoga community at large.
Yeah, well, that is
Mhm.
perfect, Greg. So maybe we'll leave it there. But thank you for sharing some of your story and your journey so far. And you can find Greg at the studio teaching regularly. So come and try his classes because he is
Yeah.
absolutely amazing. And yeah, thank you.
Oh, thank you. It's been a pleasure, and look forward to seeing you in classes soon.